You ever feel like German grammar is kind of looking at you in a mirror? Well, you're not wrong. Sometimes it literally is. Today, we're diving into what are called reflexive verbs. They're basically the looking glass verbs of the German language, where the action of a sentence, well, it reflects right back on the person doing it.
So to really get this, let's follow a little story. This is Ralph Gruber, and Ralph is not having a good week. He's at his doctor's office, and he tells Dr. Schmetterling, "For a week I've been feeling awful." Seems like a simple enough thing to say, right?
But hold on a second. If you translate what Ralph actually said, fühle ich mich mies, it literally comes out as I feel myself awful. Kind of weird, huh? Why? Why can't he just feel awful? That tiny little word, that myself, is the key to this entire puzzle. So let's start digging for some clues.
To solve this mystery, we've got to look closer at the conversation between Ralph and his doctor. We're going to focus on this mystery pronoun that just keeps showing up.
Okay, here's our first piece of evidence. The doctor kicks things off by asking Ralph, "Wie fühlen Sie sich?" Now again, literally, that's how do you feel yourself. You see that little word sich hanging out with the verb fühlen? That's our guy.
Let's just zoom in on those two words for a second. Fühlen and sich. To feel and yourself. In German, you got to think of these two as a team. They're a package deal, and that pairing is absolutely crucial.
And now, clue number 2 from Ralph's answer. He doesn't use sich, but he uses something really similar. He says, fühle ich mich mies.
And again, let's isolate it. Fühle mich. To feel myself. It's the exact same pattern we saw in the doctor's question, just with a slightly different pronoun. So we've definitely got a pattern here. A verb that needs a little partner pronoun to bounce the action back to the speaker. So what is going on?
All right, it's time to give this thing a name. These verbs, the ones that reflect their action back onto the person doing the action, they're called reflexive verbs. They are quite literally verbs that look back at you.
So here's the official definition. A reflexive verb is one where the subject is both the doer of the action and the receiver of the action. You know, a great way to think about it is that the subject becomes its own direct object. You are literally doing something to yourself.
Now, to make this all work, you need the right tool for the job. And this table, this is your absolute best friend. It's your cheat sheet. For every subject like ich for I or we for we, there's a matching reflexive pronoun, mich or uns, that sends that action right back where it came from.
And this isn't some obscure grammar rule you'll never use. No way! It's woven into the fabric of everyday German life. I mean, think about it. In German, you rest yourself. You shower yourself. You dress yourself. You even catch a cold to yourself. It's a really fundamental way of talking about your own personal life and routines.
Okay, so that's the what. Now for the how. How do we actually put together a proper, grammatically correct sentence using these verbs?
Luckily, there's a simple recipe for it. Let's take the verb sich umsehen, which means to look around. Step 1, start with your subject, ich. Step 2, add the main part of the verb, all conjugated, sehe. Step 3, this is the big one. Pop that reflexive pronoun, mich, right after the verb. Then you can add your other details, and last but not least, you stick that little prefix at the very end.
And voila, when you put it all together, you get this. Ich sehe mich nur ein bisschen Subject, verb, reflexive pronoun, details, and then the prefix. You just follow that recipe and you'll get it right every time.
But you knew there was going to be a but, right? This is German after all. It loves to keep you on your toes. So what happens if you use a word like weil, which means because? Well, that creates what's called a dependent clause, and it changes the main rule. The verb, which was sitting all comfy in second place, gets punted all the way to the very end of the clause.
So we can make statements, no problem. But a conversation is a two-way street. So how do we flip this whole thing around and ask a question with a reflexive verb? Well, the formula is just as clear. You start with your question word, like wann for when. Right after that comes the verb, then the subject, and then your reflexive pronoun. The rest of the sentence just follows right after. It's a super reliable structure you can count on.
Whew, okay. We've covered a lot of ground, from feeling sick at the doctor's office all the way to sentence structure. So let's boil all of this down to the one thing you really need to remember.
Seriously, if you remember nothing else from all this, just remember this one core idea. With German reflexive verbs, the subject and the object are the exact same thing.
The person doing the action is also the one getting the action. It's an action in a mirror.
And that brings us right back to where we started, with poor Ralph. The doctor's final piece of advice uses this exact grammar. She tells him, "You must rest yourself, Ralph." See, in German, resting isn't just a passive thing you do. It's an action you have to actively perform on yourself.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty interesting question to think about. What does it say about a language, and maybe even about the culture behind it, when something like resting or feeling is described as an action that you have to consciously do to yourself? It's definitely something to chew on the next time you come across one of these looking glass verbs. Thanks for tuning in.